Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Alec Barr. I'm a UX researcher by trade, and I'm currently the head of behavioral science at Oliver. And basically everything that I learned about risk and decision-making, I learned from the board game backgammon, which you'll hear a lot more about. I also came back from Glastonbury about 12 hours ago, and I do appreciate the irony of giving a lecture on making good decisions, having just made that terrible one. So bear with me. Hopefully, by the end of the next 20 minutes, I'll have informed you of two things, right? Which is, number one, I think that decision-making is both a learned and a learnable skill. And number two, that in order to do that, in order to get good at it, you need to let in a little bit of chaos, a bit of randomness. So for context, I'm going to take you back in time to 1956. If any of you have come from the Hannah Fry talk, by the way, there's some overlap with game theory. 1956, Dartmouth College in America, a bunch of very significant people got together to sort of discuss the future of artificial intelligence, computer science. This guy was there, very significant to me. You may not know him by name, but you might recognize him a little bit better as Russell Crowe from the film A Beautiful Mind. His name's John Nash, and he is the founder of game theory. So game theory is not, as Hannah Fry was saying, is not to do necessarily with playing board games. It's to do with the science of making decisions under conditions of uncertainty. Now, this crew, they were actually interested in board games, as I was, and they thought that board games were like sort of little microcosms of life, little stages for the intellect to sort of rehearse ideas, to test out theories of risk and reward and of competition and aggression and sort of offense and defense and all that stuff. It's kind of a little rehearsal space. They saw it as an educational art form. So if music captures the sonic world and painting captures the world of the visual world, game playing captures the world of agency, of deciding, of acting, of deliberating, of doing, of rehearsing. So, so they saw it as this educational art form. And the reason why I'm particularly interested in it is because who amongst us doesn't have to sort of face down difficult decisions on a day-to-day basis? And we're always making perfect decisions with imperfect information. And I think games, particularly dice games, and particularly backgammon, is a perfect metaphor. Now we're going to scoot through time all the way over to 1980s, and controversy hits. So there's a backgammon tournament in Portland, Oregon, and it's raided by the police. Now at the time, backgammon was a dice game. It was considered to be gambling, and gambling was illegal. It was punishable by up to 2 years in prison. So they brought the defendants to trial. And the defense brought in an economist, a statistician, an expert in probabilities, an expert in game theory, and the world backgammon champion at the time, to make the case that despite the fact that backgammon was indeed a dice game, it wasn't just a game of luck. It was, in fact, a game of the skillful manipulation of chance events. Yes, so the central argument was, from the backgammon world champion at the time, Paul McGreal. He said that in every turn in backgammon, there's two moves. There's a personal move, or it's a chance move, sorry, which is the roll of the dice, and a personal move, which is what you choose to do with the roll of that dice. It's the personal move, the decision about how you handle the chance event, that is the essence of the game. In other words, the roll of the dice does not force your play, it merely reduces your options. I've realized some of the formatting has gone off here. I think this is like a beautiful metaphor for life, right? The way we look at chance and randomness, not as a hindrance, but rather as a constraint on perhaps an overabundance of freedom. Now, in the end, they won the case. Backgammon was forever enshrined in law, officially, legally, as not a game of luck, but a game of skillful decision-making under conditions of uncertainty. I appreciate that some of you may have no idea what I'm talking about if you've never played this game, right? So I'll give you a brief 30-second lesson. This is a backgammon board. Some of you may recognize it as the other side of the chessboard that no one ever looks at. It looks like a complicated game. It's really not. It's played by two players. We'll just look at one side to make it easier. Players take it in turn to roll the dice. That roll of the dice tells you how far you can move your pieces forward in this one direction. You move them all into that little corner, and then you move them off. That is it. In essence, it's a race. The problem is that your opponent is trying to do the exact opposite, or the same, in the opposite direction, faster than you. So you get in each other's way, and you hit each other, and basically you can send pieces back. And this is where the uncertainty comes in and the need for a strategy comes in. So there are over 18 billion legal, that's the correct number, billion legal backgammon positions that could occur in one single game. In any person's move, they could have between 10 to 30 choices to choose from. So you can and should have a strategy, but you also have to recognize that your strategy can be entirely waylaid by a chance event. And it's for this reason that I think the game sits kind of beautifully between chess and poker. They haven't actually made a TV show or a film about backgammon, so I had to get my dog to model for the poster here. But suffice it to say, when the Queen's Gambit people come along to make their biopic, I will be waiting, right? I've just noticed that my slides, my formatting's all gone off, so I'll have to talk over this one. Essentially, unlike, say, chess, you can play perfect backgammon and still lose. In fact, the top grandmasters in the world, they still lose about 40% of the time. I can't really think of another game that's like this, where you get better and better and you still fail. So try as hard as you want, you can play brilliantly over and over, and you will fail often. Which is that a lot of my friends, some of whom are here today, to tell me quite bluntly that backgammon is for losers, that says, just so you don't know, that backgammon is for losers. Now, to me, this state of loserdom, this state of losing, is precisely what makes it analogous to life. It's possible to do everything right in life and still lose. That's not a weakness, that's actually liberating, that's freeing. In life, like in the game, you're facing down a whole series of possibilities and probabilities, of decisions, a whole network of different decisions, and every decision has two components, a personal component and a chance component, an equal measure of skill and luck. So we shouldn't be treating our decisions as right or wrong or win or lose. We should be treating them as exercises in probability management. Problem is, we absolutely suck at managing probabilities, and I'll prove it to you. So imagine you're on your way to a party, and you get there and there's 50 other people there. And you look around the room and you think to yourself, I wonder what are the odds, what's the probability that two people in this room share the exact same birthday? And maybe you think it's like 1%, 2%, something relatively small, maybe 20 with some sort of statistical anomaly. Well, the fact of the matter is that it's actually, there clearly should be a percentage sign there if the formatting was right. It's the actual fact of it is 99% chance that two people will have the same birthday, which is just so unintuitive. We can prove this mathematically, I can prove it visually. I don't have time to do it in this talk, but suffice it to say that the sheer number of possible connections between people means that there are a huge number more possibilities than we first think. This is what's called the law of large numbers, right? It's what happens when you scale up problems to include vast amounts of data. And we're actually staring down the barrel of the law of large numbers every day when we make decisions, by the sheer volume of decisions that we make. So researchers at Cornell University think we make on average about 35,000 decisions every day. 230 of those are about food alone, by the way. And so you're subject to this world of probabilities, whether you want to be or not. The question is, how do you navigate it? So with that in mind, I want to share with you the 4 lessons that I've taken from playing backgammon, this game of possibilities and probabilities, of risk and reward, and hopefully you'll end up being better decision makers by the end of it. So we'll start with the most expansive and the worst formatted, it turns out. Embrace uncertainty. So this should be easy, right? We are constantly, at a cosmic level, we are facing down 96% of the universe is dark matter. We have absolutely no idea what most of the universe we live in is. Scale it down a little bit and we look at something like the weather forecast. That's something that we depend on utterly every day, and yet it's entirely probabilistic in nature. It's almost a quantum phenomenon. If you've heard of the butterfly effect, it's pretty much what governs our weather system. Scale it down again, and you get to these. You press these buttons on the way here. They don't do anything. They're called placebo buttons. They're not even connected to the traffic system. They're there just simply to make you feel like you have some control over the randomness of life. Traffic system governs itself. That is simply there to assuage your fear of control. If this doesn't make you sort of want to reckon with absurdity, then I don't know what does. Now, I've got 20 minutes. 5 minutes left. Oh, sorry. Okay. So, Alan, this is a philosopher known as Alan Watts, right? He thought that the central reason for our human suffering was our inability to handle uncertainty, right? our lack of, as they call it, ambiguity aversion. He thought the people that are best placed to navigate the complexities of life are those who are who can tolerate a high level of ambiguity. He's a philosopher from the 70s. 40 years later, another sort of philosopher came along and said at a Stanford commencement speech that he said to his students, trust that the dots in your future will connect even if the path ahead is not exactly clear. And I suppose he did all right, so we can take that advice there. So face uncertainty head on. Number 2, once you have met randomness head on, it's time to recognize that the outcome of your decision does not reflect the quality of the decision that you made. So let me explain what I mean. We call this decoupling decision quality from decision outcome. So we tend to judge our decisions based on the results, but judging by results is kind of a trap. That's a trap because results are influenced by 2 things, the quality of the decision and luck. And obviously we can control one of those things, but we can't control the other. So yet we berate ourselves all the time for making decisions that have bad outcomes, and we sometimes praise ourselves for making decisions that have good outcomes. In both of those instances, there's an arrogance that we're missing the luck, we're missing the random elements that have taken, we're just missing the random elements. Hannah Fry also talked about the Challenger disaster, where basically, because we didn't look at the data properly, we ended up with this tragedy back in 1986. Now, what we can recognize from this is that that was a bad decision with a bad outcome, but it would have been a bad decision even if the outcome had been good. We sort of know this intuitively, and yet we're not good at applying this logic to ourselves. And just to prove that I'm not immune from this, by the way, when I first started playing backgammon, I spent thousands on lessons. I was waking up at 4 in the morning to have lessons with coaches on the other side of the world. I was in Australia. And my girlfriend at the time, she was really helpful. She sort of supported me. She didn't get as obsessed as I did. But we both entered into an amateur competition about a year in. And very quickly, I was booted out of that competition. And shortly afterwards, she won it. And for a brief while, she was ranked 6th in the Australian national rankings, whereas I was ranked at 214th. So it would be easy for me to believe that this was I'd made a bad decision, but in truth, I wouldn't be here today talking about this if I hadn't had this kind of edifying experience. So practice treating success and failure as immaterial. Focus on the process, not the fickleness of fate. Number 3. If any of you have read Annie Duke's Thinking in Bets, this is her kind of central thesis. So this says, treat your decisions as bets. And what I mean by this, her description of it is very nuanced, but what I mean is treating your decisions as actual, literal, money-backed bets. So imagine if you had to put money on every single thing you ever said. You'd probably be a bit more choiceful about the words that you use. Well, the same is true for the decisions that you make. If you were forced to place a wager on every decision you made, you'd probably make better, more choiceful, more considered decisions. And we actually know this to be the case. Google and Microsoft have a prediction market system that they use where employees can buy shares in ideas, basically, to check the viability of certain projects. And it helps project managers determine which things to sort of pursue and which not. So ask yourselves, would I put money on this decision? Would I actually put money on this decision? And you'll find yourself being a lot more robust in your decision making. If you want to be really robust, there is actually a formula known as expected value, where you can compute the combined totals of all the potential outcomes and qualitative things like regret and happiness and all that kind of stuff with the likelihood of those events. You can smush all that together, and it will chuck out a number that gives you, on average, tells you on average whether your decision is right or wrong. Good backgammon players do this, poker players do this, hedge fund managers do it, and how good you are in your field is a reflection of how well you can run this calculation in your head. I am terrible at running this calculation in my head, but it turns out you can code for it. So I created this chatbot called Decision Dove, which essentially takes all of Annie Duke's philosophies and allows you to have a kind of therapist-style interaction with the chatbot, and it will take all of your inputs, quantify it, turn it into numerical data, and spit out an expected value calculation. Now, I obviously pointed it at the critical questions in my life. Should I sack in my job to become a professional backgammon player? It crunched the numbers and overwhelmingly came out not in favor of me quitting my job. So at least not yet, anyway. So decisions are bets on the future. They aren't right or wrong based on how they turn out, is what Annie Duke says, so long as you have thought of all the probabilities and the alternatives that go into it. Focus on the reasoning and then leave the rest up to luck. Which leads me to my final point, get lucky. What I mean by this is engineering situations that allow for luck. Nassim Taleb calls it positive optionality, essentially finding situations where there's a high probability of upside and a low probability of downside. And the upside, you don't even need to know what the upside is. It can be fully unexpected. In simpler terms, it's situations where the worst possible outcome is manageable and the best possible outcome is pretty decent. It's basically about engineering serendipity, by increasing your surface area exposure to luck. Luck is just the name we give to low probability upside. So increase your surface area exposure, increase your probability. There are loads of strategies for doing this, which I won't go into, but the heuristic that I use is to take 1% more risk in everything that you do. This is what the big gamblers do, right? They don't take one single big bet because the downside could be huge. Instead, they try and net up just 51% in their favor over a lifetime of small wagers. It's the diligent practice of risk as a habit. And that's what we need to do. Problem is, we are notoriously bad we have a notorious aversion to risk, us Brits in particular. We spend more on holiday insurance than we do on holidays, which I think tells you a lot. There was a YouGov survey which kind of highlights the pessimism really neatly, I think. When the British public were asked, would they go to the moon on an all-expenses-paid trip if their safe return was absolutely guaranteed? Over half of us said no. The moon, for free. The reasons that we gave for not going to the moon, by the way, were not interested, and my favorite one, not enough to see or do on the moon. So aside from this kind of chronic lack of inspiration, I'm not saying we need to go for interstellar travel. What I'm saying is, the bold thing to do is not the moonshot. The bold thing to do is to take 1% extra risk every single time in everything you do. Chances are, no one else is taking any risk anyway, so it doesn't take much to net up better than the rest. So this is where we've landed, right? Life as a kind of cosmic dice game, but one that's navigable through certain strategies, provided you can embrace that uncertainty, provided you can separate quality from decision outcome, provided you can treat your decisions as bets on the future, and provided you increase your surface area exposure to luck by taking 1% more risk in everything you do. The best backgammon players, as the best decision makers, they just try to optimize their decision in the moment with the information that they have, despite all the uncertainty. Win or lose, be damned. The rest of it is up to the roll of the dice. So as we say before every backgammon tournament, roll well. Thank you.